You're listening to Japanese Baptist Church in Seattle, Washington. Hello, friends. Welcome to JBC Connect, and this is going to be the last episode of the year. Well, actually, the last conversation I have for the year. We'll still be posting our services and stuff like that. But I thought it'd be awesome to end the year with where it all began, with my first and most special guest of all, Reverend Anita Peebles. So much can be said. Anita is just so talented and creative in so many ways. And I thought it'd be great to just bring her on again and just have this conversation. So Anita, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always love just hanging out with Anita. Always interesting conversations everywhere. But yeah, the last time we talked on JVC Connect, we were talking about Easter, right? We were talking about like what is Easter like in a pandemic, and this is April, and we were just babies then, right? We were so young, naive, and innocent, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And I I mean, I'll be honest with you, like in April, I didn't think it was going to be like this in December. I thought we'd have some degree of normalcy at the end of this year, but oh, I was so naive and innocent.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Same here.
how do you feel about that? Just like if you want to look back at Easter and now we're talking today, like what are you feeling since then?
Yeah. I mean, it's really weird to think that yeah, the first like your first episode of this was like chatting with me about Easter, and we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Like people might need to, have like a centering moment, or like maybe we could like help each other think through this. And then hello, it's December. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time in our staff meeting. I think we were like maybe 3 weeks into quarantine COVID time, and our church administrator said very gently but very realistically, like, I don't think we're going to have Easter in the sanctuary.
Right.
And that was just like, it was just like somebody punched me, and I was like, oh,
Mm,
ow, like that really hurts. That's really sad. Um, but then in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, but like, it's not like if we didn't have Christmas, it's not if
right.
we didn't do Advent in the
Right.
sanctuary and then now we're here.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of how I've been operating personally is like kind of um, I don't know, like just kind of survival mode, just kind of like, just trying to make it through, just trying to like um, do what we can, just kind of going along day by day, like that's really the lesson that I've been trying to embrace in this time. Just day by day, we're going to take in whatever news is coming. We're going to be thankful for today, and just try to go through and connect with the holy however we can, whatever day it is. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I've been.
That's a great phrase. Connect with the holy, however we can. I feel like I feel like that should be a motto for clergy everywhere, right? All the time. But I feel like we've had to practice it in a whole new way this year, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
and so much
we
of
were
our
talking,
family
right,
at
at the
home.
beginning of all that.
Mhm.
Every week, right? We were learning something new, and then okay, that doesn't work. Try it again. Try something else, and trying to
Yes.
throw it out the window. And you were really helpful in the conversations I had. Just yeah, it was a hard time, but we had to be so flexible, and because we've had to do it for so long, maybe that's kind of something we've really learned to do in this time.
Yeah. And like speaking of flexible, you might want to edit this out. I don't know, uh, but like the recycling truck is like outside my window right now, and this is what we have with working from home. And like before we started recording, we were talking about like, oh well, the pet might come through, or like something silly might happen, or there was a fire alarm in somebody's apartment building when I was zooming with them once, and like these are
Wow.
all things that we've had to adapt to,
Hmm.
and just kind of let go, just
Hmm.
kind of like be okay with it.
Yeah.
And I think that like I've been trying to like track some of the like hidden gifts of this time. which like not everybody's in a mindset to think about that all the time, and that's totally okay. I'm not in that mindset all the time, but like some of the hidden gifts that I have been holding on to and that I think might be especially poignant for Advent are like, the intimacy that we have, like through Zoom. Like I hear a lot of my church folks talking about how lovely it is to like see the inside of someone's home,
Mm,
and like I Zoomed with people on Friday afternoon, and I like, after Thanksgiving, and I had like started putting up my Christmas tree, and people were just like, "Oh, like your living room looks different now. Like you're doing some decorating," um, and we just get to like see each other and be with each other in like a
mhm.
different way. Um, and I think that that has been a blessing, for a lot of my church people, and for me, I like seeing people in their regular habitat. And I think that maybe as we head into this season of waiting, we're already on day 3. Like that this will help us kind of embrace the environment that we have, right now. Just kind of like we're all in this together in some way still, and all trying to do faith formation at home and trying to, welcome Jesus into the world again. And we've been shaken out of our regular routines, which is part of Advent.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I feel like there's so much good stuff you just said there. Like Advent is, um, well, actually, just well, a lot of what we do in ministry, right, is about space and people, right? Creating spaces for people,
Mhm.
um, is what we do, right? And spaces that we can be a family together and meet with God. And that task hasn't stopped, but it's just really different. Like it's just we're doing stuff. We create spaces out of things that I never thought possible.
Yes.
Um, I was just talking to a friend who was reaching out to find a clergy to talk about doing a memorial service, um, on Zoom or something like that. And she works in the tech world, right? Like she works in like these major companies, and like she has access to all kinds of technology. She's very familiar, but she said, I've never thought of using this stuff for a service, never thought of using this stuff to gather people, because that wasn't when it was created. And I feel like, you know, folks like you and myself, like we've had to rethink all these technologies that were originally used for, the corporate world.
Yep.
We've got to now make them holy spaces, which is really interesting.
It is.
Yeah. And it's like, so I've been seeing a lot of like your creative stuff. I'd be interested if you want to share with us like some of the stuff you're doing with kids, like for Advent and just recently, like just a sample of some of the stuff, because I think it's really amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Well, Advent is, my favorite time of the church year. And I have a friend, who we went to college together, and he's a Mennonite pastor in Philadelphia. And we always joke that like he's an Easter Christian and I'm a Christmas Christian, because
Uh,
like the incarnation and like the intimacy and tenderness of this time is just like so foundational to my theology.
mm,
So I think I might have actually had too many ideas, and then I just had to like pare it down and be like, okay, let's still not take on too
send
much.
some our way.
Yeah. Um, well, something that I'm really excited about that I'm actually starting this evening. It's kind of an echo of what I had started doing, like right when the pandemic really kicked off. And I was doing a story time, like a bedtime story for kids. It was at 7 o'clock, just so it wouldn't be like too late for people. Um, and I just like have a bunch of children's books that I have from my childhood, and then like my dad wound up sending me some that they still have at home.
Mm,
um, and so I would just like read to kids. But I have a lot of Christmas related books. And so I'm doing like a Christmas time story time. So I anticipate that it'll probably be like 15-20 minutes maybe. Usually we would just read together, and we would observe some of the images, talk about our favorite parts of the story, and then we pray together. And then, there you go. And it's just kind of like, I think like holding that space for like curiosity and wonder and doing something together, even though we can't be in the same physical location. And so that's really cool. I hope people come. I'm really excited.
Mhm.
And I've got my lineup of Christmas related picture books, so I can send you some ideas too,
Yeah.
of some that I really like. There's two that came out this year. One is All the Colors of Christmas by Matthew Paul Turner, and it is really really sweet, and I think like really captures the um, I think like the complexity of this season too. Like it's not all just, presents and Christmas trees and stuff, but like one of the colors of Christmas is blue. And so it talks about like sometimes we have sad feelings in this time too. And that's an important thing. So that's a cool book. And then another one is Little Mole's Christmas Gift. And it's just this sweet story about this little mole in the woods who's like looking for something to give his mama for Christmas. But then he finds a lot of people in need, and he's got to think through like, what does that mean? Like, what is the heart of giving? So
Mhm.
that's cool. So those are like theological books that are also children's books. So I could talk about that a lot. But
That's great.
we've also done this Advent calendar online. It's just on like myadvent.com or .net, and then you can just like upload videos or just have reflections or share a picture or something. So I put that together for the church, and some of my church folks like sent me different offerings to include. So that was really great. It's kind of a collaborative project. And then we've also have a little bag, a little packet for children and youth. And I actually don't have one right here. Otherwise, I would grab it and show you. But has like an advent calendar. That's one of the practices at SFBC is to give kids an advent calendar every year. Um, and so I always try to pick a really nice one that doesn't just have white Jesus on it. um, and so I've got like an advent calendar and then little tea lights, so that they can make their own little wreath at home, and a copy of our Advent candle lighting liturgy that we'll use every week in church, so that they can do that at home. And then, um, oh yeah, also a box of cake mix, of coffee cake mix, so that they can make that on Christmas morning, or I guess any other time too. But then I say like, take a picture of you and your family enjoying this or making this together and like send it to us. And um, so I'm gonna make mine on Christmas morning, and so just little things that are kind of like touchstones, I think, for like, the community as a whole is enjoying the light of the Advent candles, and like you can do that in your home too. And here's the words that we're going to say in church. So maybe you could follow along and read them at the same time. You can open your door when the church is opening different doors on the Advent calendars that various people have. So I think it's trying to capture that like alone together, separate
Mhm.
but together. Um,
That's great. Oh man, I
yeah,
think I'm gonna bring my daughter Eden to these things. I feel like that's
yeah,
amazing.
everyone's
She's
welcome.
like, Dad, I don't want to go to your church. I want to go to Anita's church.
Yeah.
That's no, that sounds really great. So, what do you feel like? What do you feel like are the important things for you, like pastoring? Well, actually, wait, before I go ahead of this, like for those who are listening, they might not know that you're the next generation pastor of Seattle First Baptist. So uh, your ministry portfolio is very large, right? Because like it's not just children; it's like pretty much like I'd say like zero, even to their 30s, right? Like young adults, right?
Yeah.
So all very different, but I think this would be very interesting for parents. Like when you're pastoring the younger children of your congregation, what are things that you've been trying to keep in mind or trying to do during this pandemic time, and especially in the holidays? Like, what are keys for you in pastoring?
Um, that's a really great question. And, I always want to mention like I don't have I don't have children of my own at this time, and so like there's take it with a grain of salt because like I don't have little kids running around. I'm not trying to work from home with kids in the house, and so I'm trying to be sensitive to that. Of just like I might have ideas and they might be cool, but they might also not be accessible to like what folks need at this time.
Mm.
I've been trying to balance this. Um, I don't know really what to call it, but like I guess a sense of, you're welcome to all of these spaces and all of these programs that we're doing online, and also like totally no pressure. I think especially for our young adults, a lot of them are either in school or working from home, and so they're online on Zoom all the time, and they're just like, can I just text you and like tell you what's going on? Like I don't really want to like be on a Zoom call again,
Mm.
and I think for a lot of our youth too are feeling really zoomed out, and they're just like, this is terrible,
Right.
and so I'm trying to be sensitive of like, yes, we have these gatherings on Zoom. Yes, there are these activities we can do online together, and also no pressure. Um, but if you are looking for a space to come together, that's okay. So there's a lot of flexibility, like you said earlier. Like we just have to find ways to be flexible, and so I think there's a sense of holding things lightly. Like I am planning a lot of things, but I'm also trying to hold those things lightly and say, like, if they don't happen exactly how I imagine them, that's okay. Because what about 2020 is how we've imagined it? Not very much. Um, so that's one thing that I'm trying to do and trying to be understanding about.
Mhm.
And and I think like thinking about the holidays, I really want folks to feel empowered to like do spiritual formation at home and to be intentional about that sense of awe and wonder that is really central to this time of year, I think, in this season of the Christian calendar. Um, because I think that sometimes people are like, okay, my kid goes to Sunday school, or like my kid goes to church, such and such times a month. Like, check the box, like, great, now they've been spiritually formed, when really that's like 1 hour a week, right? 1 or 2 hours a week. And so, like, most of spiritual formation does happen at home. And so I want to, give families tools that they can explore that in a way that feels good to them in their home at their own pace. So like, yeah, so like for example, I have like 5 Advent candles, like one Christ candle and then one candle for each Sunday of Advent. Um, and they're battery operated, so like you don't need an adult to help you with it. If the kid wanted to observe something and their parents weren't feeling it at that moment or something. But then also like sending the liturgy home too, and it says like, one person reads this, then you light the candle, then you do this, here's a song that goes with it. Like trying to make it accessible, so that somebody's like, it doesn't take a special pastor or a special room to feel God's presence, but you can observe that at your house, in your bedroom, or like I am, like at my kitchen table right now.
Mhm.
um, so those are the main things that I've been trying to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's really good. Now I'm listening to you. I'm thinking of like how maybe a lot of the work that you do so well, I think, is like creating spaces of spiritual formation. Like I heard that word a couple of times, and I think a lot of what spiritual formation is, like listening to you and just thinking of, what I've read and what I've studied. Like a lot of it, I guess, is creating spaces of processing and then creating intention and action. Right? It's like processing, creating intention and action, and I feel like maybe that's why I feel like whenever I see one of your projects, I'm so impressed by them because they're always like inherent in those. It's always like you're helping people to like very physically like um, embody like some kind of processing. Get it in their bones, get it in their soul, and then what do you do with it? And I feel like um, that's always like a kind of this movement I see in the stuff you're doing, which is really great. Like when you're doing storytelling, you're always get inside of this story, let it like kind of soak into you, and then what are you going to do about it? And I feel that, I mean, that should be the practice of every pastor, every church. But sometimes we get kind of lost in that process. But I like the elegance and like just the consistency of it, and I think that's great. And it makes me think a lot about, because of all those like external superficial forms that we relied on before, like we could kind of hide behind them, but now that they're all kind of taken away, we've got to get back to like, well, what is the core of Advent? What is the core of spiritual formation, right? Because like, yes, we can't give them like dinner banquets and stuff like that, we can't do like choir gatherings or whatever, but I know,
Yeah.
but um but at the heart of it, beyond space, like physical spaces, we're a place to help form spirits, right? To do spiritual formation. So
Mhm.
what's involved in that? And I think you do that well. And I
Thank
think the principle of it translates to many ages. Um, and that's definitely something for me to think about for sure. So I guess
you.
maybe just kind of like before we kind of go, there's a whole bunch of other things I want to talk about. Like in the future, I do really want to talk about your involvement in the Baptist Peace Fellowship. But I realized to do it justice, I want to dedicate an episode to it. So we're gonna do that for 2021. I
All right.
promise. So I hope our listeners will stick around for that. But before we go, what are what are things that you as an individual and as a pastor, like what are things that you're hoping that you could communicate to people for this particular Christmas? Like what do you think is like really important to you that comes across during this pandemic Christmas?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and I want to hear your answer too.
Yeah.
And I just want I just want folks to know that they're loved,
Mm,
and that love is at the center of this season,
mm,
um, and it's not a wishy-washy love. Like it's not a love that isn't present because we can't see the mall Santas in the same way that we would in a normal year. But it really is like Mary's Magnificat love, like really really strong and really like calling for justice kinds of love. And it's a love that says, you don't have to do anything to be worthy of this love. And you don't need to have a Christmas tree. You don't need to um, be able to travel, hundreds of miles to hang out with your family to feel this love, but it's with you all the time wherever you are. And it's a very vulnerable and embodied love. And I think that vulnerable and embodied are things that we are experiencing in 2020 in ways that we maybe didn't think about. Like, I'm almost 29, and so I'm pretty young, but people younger than me have been really seriously affected by COVID and have died. And so there's no guarantee. Um,
yeah.
and so we're thinking about vulnerability more than we have been, I think.
Mm,
Um, and Advent and Christmas are such embodied moments. Like there's like incarnation is like incarnate in flesh.
mm,
And so I think that any way that you can honor your flesh and like the flesh of others, and like take care of your neighbor by wearing your mask and staying home and all of that stuff, like those are good things to do, and God is going to be with you, even when we can't gather in church on Christmas Eve.
yeah. Wow. That's yeah. Amen. That's a lot of really great stuff. Yeah, and I put you on the spot there. That wasn't really fair.
Yeah.
For people listening, like we haven't scripted anything. I just said, "Hey, Anita, why don't we just like call each other up on Zoom and we'll just chat?" And
I'm just like, I love Advent. I'll talk about it all day. Great.
yeah, and that's amazing. You just came up with this like super. I'm still processing everything you're talking about. I'm like, hmm. But
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I guess I was thinking about this just earlier this morning because I was writing like a newsletter for our church, and um, but I think the big thing for me that has been coming out is just um, the theme that Seattle First, Mount Zion, and JBC wants to talk about is like your kingdom come, right? Like
Yes.
that when Christ comes, right? We have a new kin, we have a new family that we're all part of, and and it's a beautiful truth. And just thinking about how we started off with the song "O Come Emmanuel," um, and how God's very name is like, God is with us. And I think that the main thing I just want to let people know is like, you're not alone. And I feel like the pandemic, when we no one thought like this pandemic would become a political thing, like mass would be this or that. But I think a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the things that were kicked up is really just people feel cut off for whatever reason, uh,
Mhm.
whether it be like where they're coming from or what's going on. Like we just feel like we're suffering alone. And I think I think Advent and Christmas for me is just reminding like, hey, God's very name is saying like you're not alone. Like God's with you, and God's people are with you. So I think that's even more important right now because we're going to have virtual services, and like you might be watching this on a screen by yourself, but it's just important to know like um, just don't forget you're not alone. And I hope everything that you're doing, like continuing to be that presence online for children, is just reminding them like Pastor Anita's still here, right? We're still here for you, and we still care.
Mhm.
Um, And I need that for myself too, like sometimes
Yeah.
ministry gets very lonely. So it's just nice to know like Anita's there, Tim's there, Patricia's there, that we're not alone in this. So yeah.
Yeah.
So as we
Well,
head
thank
into
you for
Advent,
sharing.
I just hope all our listeners, wherever you're coming from, however fragile or vulnerable you may feel, or just, whatever state you're in, you're not alone. And I'm so glad to have friends like Anita. And before I kind of end the episode, I just wanted to say that I didn't actually think about the podcast, I think, until after, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was until after you and I talked. And I thought, oh, that was really cool. I bet this would be like a great thing to get out to people. And maybe I could find other like friends that I could just talk about faith and life and everything. And that first episode we did was very popular because you have a lot of fans, but so that helped a lot. But it just started this thing, and I'm so glad that we did it in this journey. And just hearing the wisdom and insight that you shared now just is really helpful too. So
Well,
thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
asking.
Yeah. And
Always fun to chat.
yeah, so happy Advent, everyone, and happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. And we will have more conversations in the new year. So thank you, Anita, very much.
Thank you.